Can you please start?
Hello, everybody. My name is Roland Montagne. I'm principal analyst at IDAT DigiWorld. It's a great pleasure for me to moderate this panel about FTTH rollout in the Philippines and how all the players manage the pandemic to drive innovation rolling out FTTH. Before giving the mic to and presented all our three panelists, I will present our analysis of the situation today in Philippines concerning FTTH rollout. Indeed, we measure at the end of last year about 4.1 million FTTH subscribers in the Philippines, to be compared to almost 22 million FTTH homes passed on the total of 24 million total homes in the Philippines. This means that already today, the coverage rate home passed on household is quite high in the country, as you can see here, with more than 90%. There is still a place for a better take-up rate. Subscribers on home passed is only beside 90%, as well as the penetration rate subscribers on household. You can see on the right side of the slide that despite the pandemic, rollout has been accelerated in terms of fiber to the home in the Philippines, with the growth in terms of home passed at the end of 2021 compared to the end of 2020 of more than 60%. And we will see how the players manage this acceleration of rollout. The market is really dominated by three major players: Globe Telecom, PLDT, and Converge ICT solution. Those players have in hand almost 95% of the FTTH market. So we are very lucky because today we have those three players around the table to talk about the situation in the Philippines. Let me introduce the three speakers we have today. Mr. Danny Teixeira is advisor of the broadband business at the Globe Telecom. Good afternoon, Danny. Then we have Mr. Jeremiah de la Cruz. Jeremiah is Senior Vice President and Head of the Consumer Group at the PLDT, the largest telco company in the Philippines. Jeremiah is an accomplished strategic leader with solid experience in managing cross-functional teams and delivering revenue and growth. Good morning, good afternoon, Jeremiah.
Good afternoon, Roland.
And Mr. Jesus Romero. Mr. Romero was appointed CEO of Converge ICT Solution in February 2016, and he oversees and manages the company day-to-day operation covering revenue generation, customer experience, product development, and growth initiatives. Good afternoon, Jesus.
Good afternoon.
So I propose you to start by introducing where you are today in terms of FTTH rollout in your company. So I will now give the mic to Danny from Globe. Please, Danny, could you set up the scene for us about what Globe involvement in FTTH rollout in the Philippines?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. If I may, just a couple of slides. Yeah. So here, I think building up from what Roland has presented earlier, I think you've set the stage pretty well in the sense that it's a beautiful, massive country, Philippines, of 7,000 islands, population, massive population of 112 million, and of course, more than 27 million households, or more than 24 as articulated earlier. But what this proves is not only we have a beautiful and big country, but also a very highly connected population with 140% in terms of mobile penetration, which more than one device per person. Internet usage is at 68%, and also the use of social media at 82%. And what we've seen over the last few years, especially with pre-pandemic going into all the way to 2022, we've seen that it's been a huge growth in terms of mobile data usage. So where the country used to be heavily involved with SMS and voice, we've seen that grow exponentially over the last few years, especially with home internet growing from 2 all the way to 3 out of 5 households. With the aggressive connectivity growth that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, we're also being hampered by various disasters that's happening. And most recently, we've gone through and recovered among all the operators here. It's really down south in the Visayas region for Typhoon Odette. And we've spent months since the month of December all the way to as far as February and March, trying to recover the services for connectivity down south. And so far, I think we're doing very well with 100% uptime in those areas, and we continue to serve our customers again. Not only that, in addition to that, you will see that Globe, not only in the center part of the business here, we have 90 million in terms of consumers and over 150 billion in terms of revenue, but between left and right, you'll see a combination of how we're leveraging within the Singtel group as well as the Ayala group. And on the right-hand side of things, how we're punching away in terms of leveraging on the highly connected and social class of the Filipino community to actually offer a full suite of products and services beyond telco. And telco would be the fuel or the connectivity, the base layer that actually enriches the whole digital ecosystem to enable the Filipino people to actually do much more with their connectivity, be it mobile as well as broadband. And that's where we will continue to push the envelope in terms of next-gen connectivity for all, because that's the main purpose. How we want to really provide connectivity to the Filipino people using actually wireless and wired connectivity. And it's very comforting to see that even though we had been plagued by so many natural disasters over the last 2 to 3 years, we're still punching away in terms of really having that exponential growth as more and more consumers in Philippines actually move towards a stable wired connection.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roland.
Thank you, Danny, for sharing with us where you are today with Globe in the Philippines. Let me now give the mic to Jeremiah from PLDT. Please, Jeremiah, could you share with us where you are today in the Philippines in terms of FTTH rollout?
Sure. Let me just pull this up. Can everybody see that slide?
Yes.
They're coming through okay? Okay, great. So firstly, if it's okay, I know we were given a good afternoon to everybody. We were firstly given just asked to do one slide and keep it to 5 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll keep it to 5 minutes. It might take me a couple more slides though than that one. But just to give you a little bit of an overview of PLDT for some of you that may not be as familiar with our organization. So PLDT is the largest fully integrated telco in the country. We're both across the mobile as well as the fixed side of the business, international connectivity, as well as with satellite capability as well, right? So we actually cover the full spectrum from a telecoms point of view. Now, I know our focus is really on the fiber business and our home. So I'll take you through a little bit of a zoom in on our fiber business. So we have currently enjoying over 50% subscriber share, as well as revenue share when it comes down to fiber. To take you through a couple of those key things that actually help support our fiber network. You can see here over time, we actually do have the largest fiber network in the country with over 743,000 kilometers covered with our fiber. I will, I guess, share with you that this fiber coverage is supported and actually leveraged across both of our fixed as well as our wireless network, right? So a lot of this fiber is being actually able to be leveraged across both fixed as well as our wireless businesses. In terms of homes covered, we've actually ramped up quite a fair bit over the last few years. And as of the end of 2021, we've actually increased our coverage to 13.9 million homes. So you can actually see there the number of ports available as one potential measure, or how many homes we actually cover. Now, in terms of that translation, this one gives you a little bit more of a different view in terms of what parts of the country we do cover, right? There are 82 provinces, 1,600 different towns, or if you take it down to a more granular level, 42,000 barangays, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, we currently cover 87% of those provincials, of those different provinces, right? 60% of the towns, and about 32% of all of the barangays. So as you can see there, whilst we cover off almost 100%, getting close to 100% of the provinces, there is still a way to go when it comes down to really getting through to all full coverage of each province and each of those municipalities beneath there. But you can see that step change from 2017, 2020, and even 2021, as Roland has mentioned, there actually has been an acceleration in that rollout across the board. Just briefly touching on, I guess, greater capability, which does support our home business, and that's really data center capability. As you know, a lot of what we do with the internet is more often than not looking at content, looking at accessing different types of information. And we do have quite an extensive data center capability, working with our partners to ensure that we're able to deliver the best experience possible for our customers, right? That's obviously getting that data, that content as close to the edge as we possibly can. And finally, this will be my last slide, so don't worry, I'm not going to take you through a long one, but just the last slide is to really say, you know, it's not only just the biggest and the broadest, fiber network in the country. We have enjoyed, I guess, 4 years running now, actually the award from Ookla as being the fastest broadband or the fastest fiber network. Actually, broader than that, sorry, it's the fastest broadband network in the country. We would like to see this go even faster. We do have some challenges, and those challenges are predominantly that we still do have some legacy customers on copper that does anchor us down a little bit when you look at the average. But even on that basis alone, still being able to secure the fastest network with some of those copper customers as we migrate them to a full fiber network. We're quite pleased and quite proud that we have been able to serve and improve the average speed of internet connectivity within the country. So that's just a little bit of an overview for PLDT, and I hope that's been helpful for all of you.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah, for sharing with us achievements of PLDT, quite impressive. Now I would like to give the mic to Jesus from Converge to share with us their achievement in terms of FTTH rollout in the Philippines. Please, Jesus.
Yes, thank you, Ronald, and good morning to everyone, to the members of the board of the FTTH Council, my colleagues in the industry, friends from media and technology partners. Again, I'm Boboy Romero, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Converge. Again, you know, we're talking about a topic that is not really new and is really very high in everyone's agenda. And this spotlight has been on our industry, telecoms and connectivity, especially with the onset of the pandemic. And we've said it before, and let me reiterate, today we believe firmly connectivity is now the lifeline of the Filipino. We've always anchored our objectives on our mission and vision, our guiding principle to fiber power the Filipino nation. Later on, I'll also talk about, you know, how much it's grown on top of what my colleague just mentioned. And Converge really exists to be able to provide Filipinos with fast, reliable, stable, and value-laden connectivity so that in the end, they can be their best. It's this goal that has allowed us to quickly adapt, innovate, and address the needs of the pandemic affected Filipinos, and more so moving forward. Even before the pandemic, we've actually had a very ambitious plan for the Filipino people. We made that announcement in 2018, not knowing what would happen. And again, you know, some people would say that this boom is just because of the pandemic. We really do not believe so. We believe that Philippines was just really underserved and continues to be up to today. We knew that if we didn't push fiber, it would be unlikely that we will be seeing the very dynamic situation that this industry is in today. And how did we do this? A lot of innovations on rolling out the network infrastructure, putting a network on top of it that is world-class, creating very innovative and differentiated products, innovating on customer experience and online, and finally, identifying and working very well with the communities that we serve. So again, you know, the newest player on the block, last to present as well, we knew that pressure is going to be very high to deliver something very different. And I think so far we have done what we have intended to do. In Converge, we actually believe that the network is the product. Without a network that is capable of delivering world-class services and innovative services, then the chances for success is going to be very low. And of course, it's all anchored around fiber. Finally, what have we done to help the country? We built a national backbone. This would be the third national backbone in the country. Although, of course, luckily for us as a greenfield player, the newest and the most modern. We've rolled out about 13,500 kilometers. That's just actually on the fourth quarter. Total terrestrial kilometer of fiber is 103,000. But of course, each kilometer could have more than one fiber, but we just count the actual distance. Submarine cable, we built a domestic submarine backbone, 1,800 kilometers, 20 landing stations. This allowed us to now reach, at least at the end of the 2021, 10.9 million households on 5.9 million ports, serving 1.7 million Filipinos. The backbone, of course, is the heart of our network. And while it is substantially completed, the work is not done yet. There's still a lot more work to strengthen it, adding more loops and extending to other regions in the country. And again, the major objective is to ensure that we reach not only the underserved, those who are not yet enjoying fiber, but also the unserved through the whole of the Philippine archipelago. So a lot more work to be done. And this year, there's going to be another major push to reach more towns and cities. As of end of last year, we had added about 50% to our footprint, 495 towns and cities covered already. I think this will be my last slide. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Jesus, for this extensive presentation. I think we have all now a clear vision of the situation, thanks to the presentation of Danny, Jeremiah, and Jesus on what's happening in the Philippines. I have maybe a first question. As you all said, we have seen acceleration of FTTH home passed in the country. And I was wondering, what was your strategy? Because we all know that there has been some constraints in terms of rollout FTTH with this pandemic worldwide, also applying in the Philippines. So what are the best practices? What are the techniques you have used that you can share with the audience in terms of explaining the success in terms of home pass being deployed on the last year? Can start with Danny, maybe.
Wow. Okay, maybe I'll go. In the sense that for the audience as well to understand that majority of the fiber deployment in the Philippines is still above the ground, unlike in some markets where you go underground. So in terms of permitting as well as deployment, it's still a pretty lengthy process that we need to go through to get it going before you reach fiber to the home. Having said that, over the last 2 years, in addition to the disasters that's happened, we went through a pretty tight pandemic phase as well, with start-stop, especially with lockdowns, even learn from home as well, because the schools and the universities were closed as well. And with that, what Globe did was also to see how we equip our technical workforce to be able to still install fiber and repair fiber and even migrate the legacy base towards fiber technology in a safe environment that is appealing to the customers, where you don't create unnecessary risks as part of it as well. So we were in PPE gear, we were in tags where we measured the temperature for the day. We even text our customers to make sure that we're sending vax technicians over to your place, and if that it's good, and if your customers are comfortable with it as well.
Thank you, Danny. Jeremiah, what's your point of view on this?
I think so. Thank you. I can't say we have one sort of silver bullet or one approach to being able to address all of the different challenges, because frankly, the challenges are different depending on the different areas, depending on the buildings or the village, etc. So what we found is actually it's working quite closely with the LGUs as well as with the local management or body corporate for that particular village, right? The village management team, to be able to understand from a permitting point of view or accessibility perspective, what are the different requirements, right? And it's working in that partnership with them that actually enabled us to continue to do our rollout, and if anything, accelerate our rollout during that period, as well as continue to ramp up our installation capability during the pandemic. Look, needless to say, we also did similar things that Danny mentioned, which was around, PPEs, getting advanced sort of permits in advance to letting people know in 24 hours ahead of time that you're coming to install. Definitely in the first couple of months of COVID in 2020, we're all feeling our way through it because there was no one standardized approach to it, right? One from a legal perspective, and then the second one is also, more importantly, it's what our customers were comfortable with, right? Because each customer had their own concerns and their own issues when it came down to that. So we're really working with a very dynamic environment with lots of different stakeholders. Ultimately, it was really the drive, the passion, and the need that we saw from our customers as well as the market about getting connected, right? Everyone knows, right? It's whether you're working from home, whether you're looking to actually, study from home, or you're looking to play from home and entertain yourself, connectivity is key. And whilst mobile has served the country for a long time with ad hoc capability, which is actually great, and predominantly from a mobility perspective, but the pandemic, with us having to do more, actually really reliant on that connectivity, it really did thrust up the importance to have each home connected up as fast as they possibly could. So.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Jesus, how did you manage these pandemic challenges at Converge?
I think one of the benefits we had was we had a master plan, so we knew where we were gonna go, and to us the challenges that typically would be mentioned were taken as a given. It's a process. So we have done most of this work until recently in-house, which is probably one of our differentiators at that time. So that the design, the build, the permitting, installation, repair, that was all done internally in-house. Although we have augmented since then because of the exploding volume. So, we would apply wherever we had planned to roll out as long as the backbone is live. Most of the time, you would get it in a reasonable period. If not, we just move on. So it was never to us a reason to not hit our internal rollout targets. And I think, the eventual result of the actual number of lines we have been rolling out in a very short span of time is a testament to, how a simple approach can actually help you be more successful. And again, I go back, in-house teams, meaning they were our employees, obviously more committed, but not at great volume. During the pandemic, we had, the peak the highest number of installations as everybody was rushing to get a service. And it was plus and minus, you know. Good about the pandemic during the lockdown, there was no traffic. So our guys could move around, and we had special IDs, right? All of us, the IATF IDs. But the downside was there would be lockdowns, could be very localized, as you know, as small as a street, could be a barangay. And again, as I said, we can't do anything about it. We just move on and attend to those that we can. So, you know, quite a simple formula for us.
Thank you, Jesus, for sharing this. Quite impressive. Maybe a question about acceleration of FTTH subscription during the pandemic period. We know that also in the Philippines, there is a mobile or wireless connection being quite available and successful. Have you seen the pandemic situation driving FTTH subscription compared to mobile wireless? What's your point of view on this, and what are the tendencies in terms of FTTH subscription? Maybe we can start with Danny.
I think over the last 2 years, we've seen that the need for home connectivity has increased tremendously. And that would come in two categories, obviously. One is wired, where there's a huge demand for either XDSL technologies, depending on where there's coverage, as well as fiber. And where there's no fiber, there was a bit of a rush towards fixed wireless as well. And a lot of them were trying to rush to get fixed wireless on LTE. And of late, you would start to see 5G plans come up in the market. But typically, it's been a huge, tremendous growth in terms of both wired and wireless for home connectivity, with the prolonged lockdowns that we've seen, either from work from home or learn from home. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny. What's the situation at PLDT, Jeremiah, on this point?
I think the numbers in the industry speak for themselves. If you have a look at the number of households that actually registered in 2019, all the way through to 2022 or 2021, which actually has everyone's finished their full annual year disclosures, the number of households connected to a fiber connection has dramatically increased. And you're seeing that the penetration now, when you look at household penetration, you're sort of hovering around the mid 20s, depending on how you want to calculate it. So that's a really big jump. That's a really big jump over a very short period of time. Now, I think you started off this session earlier on to say, well, market was probably poised. The market has been underserved for a while, as a combination of things that would have driven that. But one thing the pandemic definitely did help was really highlight the need for that dedicated high-speed connectivity within the home. I think for a lot of families, there was the view that they could actually be okay with the mobile connectivity, and that connectivity was strong. And we've seen that as well reflected in another part of our business, with our mobile network actually performing quite well just prior to the pandemic, right? But when you're looking at ongoing usage, you're looking at heavy content usage, you're looking at need for low latency applications like Zoom or Teams, etc. There really is no replacement for a fixed line fiber connectivity. And I think it's that combination of the lockdown and everyone wanting to connect up at the same time and needing to have that reliability in the household that really created a perfect storm. And we saw that penetration rate increase dramatically over that period. Now, as Danny mentioned, there was also a rush, and we experienced this as well, in the areas that we didn't have a network, or we didn't have the capacity to install. We also saw a similar boom when it came down to fixed wireless products. I think what that really comes from is the fact that homes, families, individuals really just needed to find a solution to continue to operate during the pandemic conditions, right? They just needed to find, and whatever solution was possible, what's most, accessible for them, they were using. What we have seen continuing on as the pandemic has continued on, and actually now, I guess, depending on if you subscribe, if the pandemic's finished or winding up or it's taking another turn, we are seeing a different phase when it comes down to that. But the demand remains strong. And I think the reason the demand has remained strong is because the way that we interact, the way our customers have interacted, the market has really changed in the way that it sees connectivity within the home. Our usage and the way we work with e-commerce, the way we communicate with each other using video applications, and the way we consume content as well within the home and entertain ourselves has fundamentally shifted. So whilst we might be going back to a more mobile society, reverting back to a lot of mobility, there are some things that won't change, right? And some of those things that haven't changed are things like, yes, working from home, it's not 100% working from home, but we are seeing when we talk to our enterprise customers, actually that they're more often than not going back to a hybrid engagement. So it's not 100% working from home, not 100% in the office, hybrid. That means that that need to remain connected and that connectivity in the home remains important. And so that's why I believe we've actually seen that demand, whilst it was highlighted, if you say it's actually like a fuel to the fire when the pandemic first kicked off, that remains strong because we think fundamentally the way that consumers interact, our customers have interacted with the internet and the way that they see connectivity has changed.
Thank you, Jeremy, to confirm that there is a really strong adoption concerning fiber. Jesus from Converge, are you confirming this tendency at Converge?
Yeah, pretty much the same. We really thought that the pandemic was a good marketing boost, but as I agree with Jeremiah. It finally clarified to customers, what is the most appropriate service. Immediately after the lockdown, we saw a surge in network traffic, and looking at the nature of the traffic, it was something that was heavily on content, entertainment. Everybody at home. Before, mom and dad would be at work, kids in school, etc. Suddenly, everybody's locked down and they start, having nothing to do. And you see traffic from Netflix, from YouTube just exploding. And that was the first hurdle we had to really fix. But then again, all it meant was that finally customers realized that I do need a fixed broadband service at home. Our belief is that, yes, it was a marketing boost. There is some questions sometimes, some concerns that, okay, lockdown is over. We still think that because a lot of our countrymen are still underserved, that demand is going to continue to be strong. It is evident in the network traffic. It is evident in the type of applications that we're beginning to see. Not only new uses like, video conferencing. I remember many years ago, Danny, in Globe, we launched telepresence. Remember that? Very expensive, high-end conferencing. Today, you just launch a browser or you launch an app and you do a video call. That was not present before. Second, from experience, we saw a lot of customers complaining about slow internet and, upon further scrutiny, oh my God, you bought 3 UHD TVs and you're watching a lot of Netflix UHD movies. Your bandwidth usage is going through the roof. And we think it will continue to happen. And I totally agree as well. There is a space for everything. When I'm outside the home, obviously, I use my Globe and Smart Mobile, right? I have both.
We thank you for your custom. Boy.
Thank you all for your testimony. Very, very interesting. We have a few minutes left. Is there questions coming from the audience on the chat box?
Maybe Roland, if I may just add, one of the other things.
Please do, Jesus. Yes.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. It also, gave us more insight on how internet is really being used at home. Because in the past, it was very occasional, only when people were at home. And, that has led to some of the innovations that we have since launch, like time of day, realizing when people really use it heavily versus when they're not using it. And there are still a lot more insights that came from finally having a situation where the home internet is being used a lot heavier than before the lockdowns.
Thank you. No questions coming from the ground? Perfect. Maybe another question about arrival of 5G, as has been already mentioned. We know that this fiber can be used, also is recommending to be used for mobile backhaul and mobile front haul when 5G will be deployed. Are you validating this assumption that having a quite dense fiber to the home network is an advantage for the Philippines to have to deploy 5G in the next quarters, and where you are today? Maybe we can start with Danny.
Roland, here you're referring to 5G FWA?
We're talking about 5G fixed wireless access, yes, but also the need to have a fiber as a backhaul for deploying 5G.
I think 5G, when we look at from a hybrid network standpoint, from a backhaul perspective, yes, it makes sense. But from a customer end perspective, when we look at FTTH, is without a doubt the demand for connectivity, unlimited, stable fiber connection is there, and you saw that in the growth rates. However, if we talk about 5G FWA, in my opinion, it's gonna be where it matters, because it's still very much high speed, low lat, but still very much short distance. And with a country this size, you typically take time before you go with a high X% of population coverage. So such a deployment would be more of a complementing to the fiber rollout that we're doing here, rather than be a key technology, as you see in certain markets where you really have 5G FWA growing at a high number in terms of a plan mix perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny. What's your point of view at PLDT, Jeremiah?
Look, I think maybe similar to what Danny's done, which is divide the use of, say, for example, 5G from an endpoint or the last mile perspective. And then there's 5G from a backhaul point of view. I believe really ultimately fiber is going to be needed, right? I mean, fiber is still the best and the most efficient technology to be able to manage and transport large amounts of data across any geography at this point in time, right? So fiber actually becomes key as part of any network rollout, any mobile network rollout, whether it's 4G or 5G, right? So I think from a backhaul perspective, yes, there may be some use case, certain applications that you might look to use 5G as a backhaul, but the predominant technology that we see at the moment, now that's the disclaimer at the moment, because technology continues to change and there'll be made potentially some new things. But at this point in time, the most efficient, the most robust, and the most effective form of backhaul, regardless of what the endpoint usage is still fiber. So I think that rollout will continue, and that need and that dependency for fiber will actually remain in the market. Now, when I look at the, if I take that further on, and now let's start looking at the last mile and connectivity usage, right? I think it's really, I'll now sort of tap into what Bullboy was talking about earlier on. It's going to come down to use case basis, right? There are going to be different use cases where 5G becomes particularly relevant and actually the better technology for usage. But then there are other cases where fiber remains the best and the most robust. If you're looking at for the average home, where really it's about getting connected and allowing multiple devices concurrently using high bandwidth, the most efficient technology at the moment, the most effective technology at the moment still remains fiber, right? And that's why we're seeing a continued rollout of our fiber network and connecting as many homes as we possibly can in the Philippines, right? That remains. However, it's not to say that 5G is not important and 5G won't play a role in the mix. There are different reasons why 5G may actually become relevant. One particular reason could be potentially used as a, say, for example, as a backup to your fiber. given Danny mentioned a lot of the network, a lot of the fiber network in the Philippines is still prominently above ground. It is prone to damage, whether it be through squirrels or whether it be through car accidents or even typhoons and weather, right? So that does tend to happen. And you can use actually 5G as an alternative access point to be able to provide a backup service to customers, right? That's one potential use case. Another potential use case, there are certain households where actually, or certain areas where 5G, it's more efficient, or there's not enough density or customers to get there from a fiber perspective, that you would use 5G to serve that particular area, right? So there's, I think it really comes down to the different segments. It comes down to the different use cases on which technology works. And I think that the dimension that's not in there yet that I will just touch on is it will also come down to the cost of the chipset, right? So 5G chipset, there is still a worldwide shortage of chips, which actually means that the 5G chipset for fixed wireless remains high and still not something that can be used to get down even further into the different segments of the market. So if that changes and that dynamic changes and rare earth minerals become a lot more abundant than where they are today, we may see 5G chipsets drop in price dramatically, which will then mean that we'll actually be able to use 5G fixed wireless in a much bigger and broader sense, right? Now, the last use case that I mentioned is really from purely mobility perspective. I think really when you're looking at mobile, as Buboy mentioned, there is no replacement for mobile. It's someone that wants to move from one area to another area, then constantly they're on the go. They're not really on a LAN, right? There is no replacement for a mobile, right? And that's where it really comes down to what is the use case that the customer or the individual has for you to choose the right technology that's most relevant.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, Jeremiah. Jesus, what's your point of view on fiber and 5G, please?
We're not a mobile operator, but we would love for the three of them to really start thinking about building smaller cells. I don't know what the driver would be. If again, the usage behavior of mobile users out in the field would change and require a lot more bandwidth, then maybe the current mainstream LTE won't be good enough. And as they mentioned, 5G today unfortunately suffers from the basic issue of range. There's a lot of bandwidth but very high frequencies. So if there will be a push to add more, say, picocells or smaller cells, then pervasive fiber to the home could be very valuable, to support that initiative. By the way, we're willing to sell if anybody wants to buy.
Thank you for sharing this with us. Another question may be around a different segment of the market. I mean, enterprises, especially small enterprise or medium enterprise, because all the large enterprise have their own operators. So do you think that there is today a market still to be served in the Philippines with fiber when we are talking about small enterprise and medium enterprise? Is there still work to be done? Is there a willingness for those companies to be connected by fiber? Who wants to start? Danny?
I think the demand will always be there. And if you can see the demand in the consumer households, the same would apply to a B2B element as well. And I think over the last 2 years, unfortunately, the micro SME market has been badly hit by the pandemic. And as we open things up in the Philippines, that demand for connectivity will definitely be there on how we cover our SMEs with stable, unlimited connection to be able to get back to the new normal of running business, as well as when we look at a hybrid type work, there would be elements that would start to see from a B2B to C as well. And I think considering we've seen such high growth over the last 2 years, it's just going to get better.
Thank you, Danny. Jeremiah, Jesus?
Maybe to mix it up a little bit, I'll let Buboy jump in.
Thank you, my friend. Yes, we think that there's still going to be, a lot of demand there. Many enterprises, at least on the smaller side, and in the more regional areas, are still not necessarily on fiber. But what we're seeing is that similar to consumer, the usage is changing. Just to give you a very simple example, a friend of mine, billion-peso business, running email on a server that they had inside their building. And they ran into a major issue. So, I recommended to him to move to a cloud-based email solution. And the next thing that follows there is now suddenly your bandwidth usage increases. I have a lot of Filipino Chinese friends, and what's becoming more important for their businesses is basic physical security. So, investing in CCTV systems, which are now more on the IP based, and, being able to better monitor, those factories or warehouses. Again, driving more requirements. And it's the same thing with large enterprises. Interestingly, even some financial institutions are moving their workloads to the cloud, and not necessarily cloud platforms in the Philippines, Amazon in Singapore. End of the day, again, driving a whole lot more bandwidth that, the traditional legacy cannot support. And when they do that, it extends all the way to the branches. So the branches, for example, again, moving from legacy email, something so simple, and moving to whatever, G Suites or Microsoft, and then seeing a surge in traffic. So you're seeing a situation where enterprises would have their traditional enterprise data line, and they're now asking for an additional separate broadband connection, and also driving adoption of new technologies like SD-WAN or SASE. So we firmly believe that, because of the changing needs of the businesses, and because it's still relatively underserved in terms of fiber, there's still a lot of potential out there. And hopefully, Philippines finally recovers from the pandemic, and we see a more vibrant Filipino industry driving more demand for all of us.
Thank you very much, Jesus. Jeremiah, one last word on this?
Probably just to add, similar to what Buboy was talking about, which is we still, if you recall, when we gave you a snapshot, or when I shared the slides, 45 minutes ago, about how many barangays, how many municipalities, how many cities we still cover, we're still not at 100%. We're still not at 100%. And even when you go down even to that, we still have a lot of customers that are still on some of our legacy technology. Some of that being whether it's, XDSL, or whether it's a version of HFC, etc. There is still plenty of the legacy technology. So we still see the demand, whether it be for small businesses or enterprises, to continue on for quite some time when it comes down to fiber. Now, on top of that, what would sit on top of that is there are lots, Philippines is a very entrepreneurial society. There are lots of businesses coming up all the time. As soon as it's an opportunity, there's a lot of, the entrepreneurial spirit is very, very strong in the Philippines. It's something that's very exciting about the market. And so we see as that continues to flourish, and as the market opens up and where more people traveling into the country as well, we expect there to be a lot more new businesses coming out, right? A lot of other smaller, medium-sized companies, as they go from small to medium to large out there, and they'll be looking for connectivity solutions, as well as more than connectivity solutions, but actually other ways that we can help serve them to help support their business so that they can do what they do best, right? And that is serve their customers, be it B2C or B2B. So, in short, we expect the demand similar to the consumer market in the small business as well as enterprise space to continue to be strong and continue to grow for a fair few years to come.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah, for your testimony. Well, I think we have reached now the end of the session. Let me thank you all for your participation and all your very interesting thoughts shared with us and the audience. And I would like now to give the mic to Rosafi. Rosafi?
Thank you, Roland. So actually, Roland's camera was down, so unfortunately he couldn't show up his face. So it's okay. Okay, so actually, I'd like to thank everyone, Danny, Jeremiah, and Boboy, for having a very interesting session. It was really interesting, and I think lots of things to know. And I think you also enjoyed the session today. So we have a small memento and one souvenir is for all the speakers. So we will send to your office accordingly after the event finishes. So thanks to everyone. So hopefully we will connect.
Fantastic.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.